So, J. Ruud, what lovable book are we talking about today?
Well, Stacey Margaret Jones, I'll give you a hint. The Shot.
I feel like I know this, but I don't know it.
Okay.
Welcome to Between the Covers, where J. Ruud, author of the Merlin Mysteries and the Robin Hood Mystery series, walks me, his wife, Stacey Margaret Jones, author of Mr. Catherine, through one book from his carefully curated list of the 100 most lovable novels in the English language. And I don't know what we're talking about, so I needed a hint, and I need another hint.
Okay, here's hint number 2. The Voice.
Wait, have I read it?
Yes.
See, I knew it. There's these like faint echoes in the back of my mind.
Well, this might be a loud echo. Clue number 3. The Foul Ball.
Oh, The Natural?
No. This is a book where a foul ball is incredibly important.
A Prayer for Owen Meany.
It is A Prayer for Owen Meany by John Irving.
Yes, okay.
Because, of course, the foul ball that Owen Meany hits when they're 11 years old kills the narrator's mother.
Okay, is that a spoiler?
No, because it happens in the very first chapter.
Okay. I have to watch you very carefully.
Which is called the Foul Ball.
You will spoiler a book real fast.
I'll not spoiler a book.
All right.
The 3 clues were all titles of chapters.
Yeah, well,
in
it's
the book.
Literally been 30 plus years since I've read that book. So I did not remember the names of the chapters of the book. All right. So when you made your list of the 100 most lovable novels in the English language, you didn't start by reading all novels in the English language. You used other people's lists to compile a master list that you read through, right?
Yes, although there were books I had in mind that
Sure.
were not on any of the books I had originally looked at.
Because they were your favorite.
Yes, and this is one of those. This is a book that I began reading with few expectations, but I set down only with great reluctance.
Yeah.
It was
that should be the blurb on the front cover.
One of the great reading experiences of my life. It's the first time I read The Prayer for Owen Meany.
Well, I understand that because that is definitely how I felt about it as well. But it must be on some lists, right?
Well, it is.
I mean, it's a very famous
It is.
novel.
I put it on my list of the 100 most lovable books without knowing it was on any other list.
Right, because it's a book you really love.
Yes.
Isn't it in your top 5?
It's, well, I'm not sure. Let's find out. So Owen Meany was not on the Modern Library lists of the 100 greatest novels in the English, and it wasn't on the Time Magazine lists. In 2018, PBS conducted a survey to find America's best-loved book, and A Prayer for Owen Meany came in at number 26. On the 2019 BBC list of 100 books to read before you die, Owen Meany came in at number 28. It shows up as number 28 on the BBC's Big Read survey, and it's also listed as number 82 on the Australian Big Read, number 37 on the German Big Read, number 12 on the top 100 books as chosen by Canadians. It came in as number 52 on Waterstone's Books of the Century, 20 on the Harvard Bookstore staff's favorite 100 books, and number 8 on the list of 100 favorite novels of librarians.
Oh, well, honestly, that last one that you read is probably one of the highest accolades you can give, because librarians don't have any agenda, anything to gain. They just love their patrons and want them to happily read, right? So,
yeah.
Awesome. All right. So will you earn the harps of glory or the trombone of failure with your down and dirty summary? Remind us all who have read it what this book is about and entice those of us who haven't.
Well, now you're giving me more things to do. Let's see how we do. The story focuses on best friends Owen and Johnny Wheelwright is Owen's best friend and the narrator of the story. And largely it focuses on their school days and then their young adult years. In the first chapter, Owen, an 11-year-old boy in a 5-year-old's body, hits a line drive in a baseball game that kills John's mother. Owen's devastated. John's mother was also a mother figure to Owen and had promised to pay Owen's tuition to the prestigious Gravesend Academy, where John will go to school. The Wheelwrights being patricians of the town of Gravesend where they live, and Owen's family, a poor working class townsfolk. At school, Owen's the intellectual superior not only to John, but the rest of the class. Physically, though, he's underdeveloped and challenged. Spiritually, however, he is self-confident and even dogmatic. The fact is, the incident with the baseball has convinced Owen that he is God's instrument on earth. And this gives him an inflexible authoritarian attitude about proper behavior and morality that often annoys others, including readers. But the fact he always tends to be right in his opinions puts him on a higher standing in the reader's mind, I think. Anyway, that's all I'm going to say.
Okay, wow.
Because otherwise...
You snatched victory from the jaws of defeat there.
Trombone's going to come.
Well, the harps of glory for you, my friend. All right, so when did this book come out?
It came out in 1989.
Okay.
It was Irving's 7th novel.
I must have read it. I mean, I read it in paperback, but it was early 90s when I read it, so it was still relatively new.
Yeah, that's probably...
It swept the nation, maybe.
First time I read it was about then.
And it's longer. It's not like a doorstop or anything, but it's not a quick read.
It's not real short. No.
Okay. Maybe 500 pages?
Maybe.
Okay.
Yeah.
All right. Well, why do you love this book so much?
Oh.
What's lovable?
There's all kinds of lovable things about this book. Sometimes Irving gets dismissed as just kind of a popular writer. Like
that's really easy to do as well.
Yeah.
I hate that kind of dismissal. Like, you try it.
Yeah. but sort of like in the category Stephen King or even Dan Brown.
Right. Still are amazing accomplishments.
Yeah. King himself reviewed A Prayer for Owen Meany.
Oh.
And he supplied a blurb for the front cover, which says, "Readers will come to the end feeling sorry to leave this highly textured and carefully wrought world."
Yeah, that's what I remember about reading it, that it was so immersive. It just colonized your mind, right? You were in it.
Yeah, yeah. And Owen's an incredibly strange character to be the protagonist of a book. Well, here's how Johnny Wheelwright begins this book. It's probably Irving's most famous sentence. "I am doomed to remember a boy with a wrecked voice. Not because of his voice, or because he was the smallest person I ever knew, or even because he was the instrument of my mother's death, but because he is the reason I believe in God. I am a Christian because of Owen Meany."
Yep. Is that the beginning of the book?
That's the first sentence.
Oh, okay.
That's how the book starts.
Oh, okay.
Yeah.
Right. It establishes that the stakes are quite high.
They are quite high. And it also tells you something
maybe.
about who this Owen Meany is going to be. He's the smallest person that he ever knew, so he's very small. And he has a wrecked voice. He has a voice that's recognizable to anyone because it's so apparently kind of grating.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, that's what I remember.
And people wonder, why does he have this voice? And his father owns a granite quarry. And the suggestion is that maybe his voice got this way from breathing in granite dust or something. But apparently his voice never changed.
Oh.
But there's a reason Owen believes, and it turns out he's absolutely right, that his voice is the way it is.
Well, before we go on to that, that first sentence is about Owen, but it's also about the narrator.
Yeah.
I mean, and they are each who they are because of who the other one is, right? They're so linked.
They're very linked. I don't know that Owen would have been any different if he had a different best friend.
No, but there's no spoilers because I can't remember exactly what happens. But Owen maybe couldn't have fulfilled his destiny without John.
This is true.
Thank you.
In fact, one of the clues I gave you was the shot.
Right.
In fact, it was the first clue. There's this basketball shot that the two of them practice their whole lives.
Yeah, I remember that.
Owen is
I don't remember that much,
fanatic about, let's practice the shot.
Right.
You know, he knows he's never going to be on the basketball team because he's
2 feet tall.
Well,
Slightly taller.
He never gets taller than, he never gets to 5 feet. He's 4 feet something. And so he does join the Army and only gets in because he stands on his toes when they measure how tall he is.
When is the book set?
Well, Johnny's mother is killed by the foul ball in 1953.
Okay.
The two of them graduate from Gravesend Academy in 1962.
Okay.
And they go on to college from there.
Gee, I wonder what military action was taking place around the time that he graduated or was fixing to take place.
This does come about.
Yes.
They go to college then. And while they're in college, the Vietnam War begins to progress. And Owen has this uncanny ability to say, what the heck are they doing? Why would they do that? That doesn't make any sense.
Right.
And he does this throughout. But then he still joins the Army and wants to go to Vietnam. Anyway, getting back to the shot. They begin to practice the shot when they're in high school, I think, and they keep practicing it through college and then beyond. And the shot is Owen comes running toward the basket. Johnny passes the ball to him and then grabs him and throws him up, basically.
Right, so he can make
he
shot.
can make a slam dunk.
Right.
And they can do it under 5 seconds. And
Which is a metaphor also of their friendship.
It is. But it also, I mean, you wonder what the heck this is. Owen wants to make sure that they can do it under 3 seconds, and ultimately they get to that point, and the shot becomes very important.
Yeah.
As the book goes on. But the
and
other timeline.
If you're a reader, if you're a close reader, and if you've written things, you'd know that if this shot is going to be in the pages this much,
There's be a reason for
right.
it.
So anyway, going on.
As there's a reason for Owen's dream. He has this dream, and in the dream, well, he plays the Ghost of Christmas Future in this community production of Christmas Carol. And in the last scene that he's in, when he points to Scrooge's grave, he suddenly... And this is in one of the rehearsals, I think. I don't think it's actually in one of the performances, but Owen kind of basically faints. He's surprised and shocked at what he sees written on the stone, because it isn't Scrooge's death, but he sees the date of his own death. He sees his own tombstone, and then he...
in a kind of vision?
Yeah.
Yeah, okay.
And then he begins to have dreams about this. So the dreams become important. And they are one of the things that keeps convincing him that he's God's instrument. And this is why he thinks he has to go to Vietnam.
And he is here and he has a role to play.
Yeah.
Right.
And the role is God's instrument.
Right.
But anyway, I said there were 2 timelines. The book is being narrated by John when he's grown up.
Right.
And in fact, when he's middle-aged, it's set in 1987. And he keeps talking about what happened back when he was 11. And
so it's contemporary to when it came out, basically.
Pretty much.
I mean, that timeline.
2 years earlier.
And that a lot of people were probably doing the same thing, right? Like looking back on that period of time.
Well, he certainly is.
Right.
And he's telling the story from Canada.
Oh.
He lives in Toronto in 1987.
Interesting.
And you think probably he has gone there to avoid going to serve in Vietnam. And, you're sort of waiting as the book goes on to when he's going to go to Canada.
Right, to get the specifics of what you're assuming has happened.
Yeah.
Right.
But from Toronto, he spends all this time. Okay, the entries from Toronto are like diary entries. He gives the dates, this date, 1987. And he'll talk about how he crazily went and got a copy of the New York Times again. And he talks consistently about Ronald Reagan and the Iran-Contra scandal. And he just won't let it go. And to him, it's sort of just another example of American presidents, exceeding the power that the Constitution gives them and cheating the people who've elected them, and all of that kind of stuff. So he's very bitter, and he's telling.
And this is from Canada.
This is from Toronto.
Yeah.
And his friends there keep telling him, you've been here 20 years. Why don't you actually become a Canadian instead of obsessing over what's happening in America all the time?
So you can see then that he's divided, right? He won't live in America, but he's still an American citizen. He won't let his citizenship go.
Or he won't let his bitterness go, which goes back to Owen Meany and what happens to him. When he remembers, his remembering will skip around through. He starts talking about things in 1962, but then he'll be relating things that Owen said in 1965 or 66 or whenever. And he'll go back and forth talking about his mother at a certain time, and then he'll be talking about 10 years after his mother died. So it's not a strict chronological order that you get. It's basically how his memories work.
Right. Which is relatable, right?
Yeah.
Obviously, it's hard to do as a writer because it's not pleasant to read unless you're very careful with how you structure it. Even though it seems to feel haphazard, it's not haphazard at all.
He waits a little bit before he gives you the next clue, which might be coming from a different time period. There are a lot of things in the book that you may admire because they remind you of other things. Irving attended the University of Iowa.
My friend went to
writing program.
Knew him there.
Oh, really?
Jenny Fields.
Oh, okay.
Yeah.
Well, he studied actually under Kurt Vonnegut, who was teaching there at the time.
Sure.
So you get that kind of irreverent humor, Vonnegutian, Vonnegutian humor. I just coined that word. Let's hope it catches on. There's one, fairly hilarious scene when the same year that Owen is in the Christmas Carol, he's in the Episcopalian Christmas pageant, which is where he and Owen both go to the Episcopal Church.
This is set in New England, right?
Yeah, it's Gravesend, New Hampshire.
Right. It's and the Episcopalian thing, it's also, we're Episcopalian here in the South, but that's a very New England vibe.
Yeah, well, there is also
Episcopalian church in a small town.
Yeah, there's also a congregational church in
also
a
very
small
New
town, where originally Johnny's mother went to church, but then she switched to the Episcopal church when she married his stepfather, Dan, who both Owen and Johnny loved Dan.
Yeah,
he's
good.
Like the greatest stepfather anybody ever had, and all of a father that Johnny ever needed, he says, even though we don't know who his own father was.
Does he?
Not.
Oh, interesting.
This is it's a mystery that kind of goes through the whole book. In fact, Owen kind of convinces him to try to find out who his father is. And then he looks into it and he finds out some things, but he never finds out completely. He never follows through to find out who his father actually was. And here's a quotation about that. Owen Meany told me that he was sure my father was alive, that he was sure my father knew he was my father, and that God knew who my father was, even if my father never came forth to identify himself. Owen told me God would identify him for me. Your dad can hide from you, Owen said, but he can't hide from God. Whenever Owen speaks in the book, it's in capital letters.
I remember that because his voice is so wrecked.
Yeah. And actually, he wrote a column for the high school newspaper.
In all caps?
And he wrote it always in all caps.
I forgot that.
And the
that.
column was called The Voice.
I should do that. Write all my short stories in all caps.
But ultimately, Johnny does find out who his father is, and it's Owen who...
Owen's his father?
No. It's Owen who helps reveal who the father is.
Well, it has that. That's a very archetypal kind of quest, too. I mean, like, even, Christ has this, stepfather, the real father. Like, a lot of fairy tale heroes or mythic heroes have unknown parentage. And so it's a way of being very foundational about your quest for identity, right? Or your coming of age, because not only do you not know who you are, maybe, in terms of your persona or your psyche, but you don't know where you came from.
Yeah.
So
it's like Telemachus says in the Odyssey, it's a wise man who knows his own father.
Yeah, yeah.
He's grown up without his father.
Right. So this, again, stakes. There are very high stakes.
Yeah. I got off on a tangent, which I
never
do. But,
without the tangents, our podcast would be 2 minutes long.
That's right. But in the Christmas pageant, they decide to make Owen the Christ child because he's so small.
Because he's wee.
And the babies, they've tried it with actual babies, and that's kind of been a disaster before. So they're going to do it with Owen because he is grown up enough to know what he's doing.
Right.
And by the way, Johnny plays his father, Joseph. The stepfather.
Yeah. Well, they're just inextricably linked.
Yeah.
So many levels.
But during the pageant, Owen's parents come in. And his parents are very strange. I mean, his mother seems to be completely not of this world. She's just sort of blank, staring off into space all the time, and his father is not very bright, and they're kind of intimidated by him, it seems, some of the time. But anyway, they walk in because they've heard that he's going to be the Christ child, and he sits up in the manger and yells at them, "What do you think you're doing here?"
Jesus.
And people in the congregation are going, "Is he talking to me? Do I need to leave?" Which is kind of a Vonnegusian
right
humor.
Well, it's iconoclastic, right?
Yeah.
It's busting down these precious things that we don't threaten. Well, I can see why you love this book, because it's about a lot of things that you love thinking about and processing. I mean, you are drawn to meditations on Vietnam. You are religious. You are Episcopalian now. When you read that, I guess you were probably Methodist, right? So you were Protestant.
Probably, yeah.
And you are spiritual. You think a lot about those things. And you're also theological, which I think spiritual and theological are different, obviously. Theological is more, to my mind, the kind of philosophy that informs or helps us understand our spiritual experiences or our spiritual life.
Yeah.
And this book has all of those things. And so I can see why it would be one that you probably felt like when you were reading it, it's like they asked me what kind of book I most wanted, and here it is.
And here it is.
But also, I think for me, I mean, obviously those things came through in my reading, but what I really remember and find, I liked the spiritual and theological aspect of it as well. I was really entranced by the richness of the friendship.
Mm. Yeah, they are very close.
That's what I remember the most about it. So I think for me, that was probably the most powerful aspect of it because, I mean, their friendship is almost out of this world.
Well, yeah. I mean, it's very close.
But it's so compelling that somebody you're not in a family with, somebody you're not in a romantic relationship with, can mean so much to you, right? That Owen does to John, the narrator, and vice versa.
We don't get inside of Owen. We only know his feelings as he states them.
Right, he expresses his feelings.
And also, but there are things that he does for John that you realize it's because of how much he loves him. The people have noted that the Johnny Wheelwright character as narrator reminds them of Nick Carraway in The Great Gatsby.
I was going to say that. I hadn't read that or thought of it, but when you were talking early on about the summary and who's the narrator, I was like, oh, this is Gatsby-esque because we have the charismatic central character is not the narrator. He is being observed by the narrator in a way.
And Nick Carraway spends a lot of time talking about America and what America means.
Right.
Which is all Johnny ever talks about, especially once he's in Canada.
Right, because he's thinking about his identity and how his citizenship and nationality, who he is fits with his identity as an American at that time, right? Yeah. You can't take the times out of this novel, right? It's a consideration of America during the 60s, 70s, and 80s, right?
Yeah.
So
the other book that's you can see is a big influence on Owen Meany is Günter Grass's novel The Tin Drum. Grass is a Nobel Prize laureate.
I don't think I've heard of that book or read it for sure.
It's probably his best known book. And the protagonist of The Tin Drum is a dwarf with a very large personality. Whose name is Oscar Matzerath. O.M.
So had Irving read that?
Oh, yeah.
Okay.
And in fact, he knew Günter Grass and admired him.
So it's like when you write a poem and you have a little head note that says after Billy Collins or after because you've read something and you're inspired by it and you want to be in dialogue with it in a way, right? Like this book really touched me and now I'm going to respond with my own novel. Yeah.
And, plot-wise, there's vast differences, but the character, Owen Meany, does seem to be inspired by the character from the Tin Drum.
Well, I really, really love that book. I would say it's got to be in my I won't put you on the spot, but it's in my personal top 10. And then I read another book by John Irving, and it was one of the worst books I'd ever read.
Which one was that? Widow for 1 Year?
Maybe.
Yeah, he's very uneven.
Yeah.
Some of his books have been very popular. The World According to Garp.
Yeah. Oh, I forgot that was John
very
Irving.
Popular. And
Cider
became
House
a
Rules.
Very popular movie. Cider House Rules, same thing. Became a very popular movie. Won him an Academy Award for Best Adapted Screenplay in 1999, I think it was.
But there hasn't been a successful movie of Owen Meany.
No. There was actually an attempt to make a movie of it that was so bad that Irving didn't want his name on it. And they had to change the name of it to Simon Birch.
Oh, okay. I was like, I feel like I've seen a movie of this, but I didn't think very much of it.
And I don't think it... I'm trying to remember, but I don't think it covers the entire book.
Well, Owen is such a creature of the reader's imagination. I mean, obviously, John Irving gives him specific parameters, etc., but never having known someone like that, you're going to have your own idea of what he's like, right? And it's almost, honestly, I just thought of this, but Owen Meany himself is like a mystical experience in that it's hard, he's ineffable. It's hard to explain him to someone else, right?
Yeah.
And I suppose that makes him very, very difficult to realize on film.
Yeah.
Or to translate to film from a novel where, your experience of the novel is in your own mind.
To experience this novel, you have to be open to the miraculous.
Yeah.
And the only thing you can do is believe it or not believe it because it's inexplicable.
Right. And that would be hard, I think. I think that's the first mention in this discussion of miracle. And of course, miracles, I don't want to spoil it, and I can't really because I don't exactly remember. But miracles do figure in this. And I think it's important because the book is about faith, right? Because the character says at the beginning, the narrator says at the beginning, he is why I believe in God, right?
Yeah, yeah.
And, that's its own discussion. Like, do you need miracles to believe in God? Or are they just reinforce your belief, or whatever role that plays? But in a novel, be such a catharsis, I think. And that's how I remember. I don't remember what happens. I just remember that kind of spiritual catharsis feeling while I was reading that book.
Yes. And part of that comes because so many things come together at the end.
Yeah.
And
which is just Owen, the craft of the book is so perfect.
Owen believes that he has to go to Vietnam, and they keep not letting him go.
Right.
He's in the Army, but he's in the States. He's actually it's his job to go and get the bodies that come back and to deliver them to the parents,
right,
and that sort of thing. And so he doesn't look like he's ever going to go. So he's thinking, God has picked me to do this. I can't do it.
I'm supposed to
and
be there.
And I know what the date is that I'm going to die.
Oh, that's
and it's
right.
getting closer and closer. I mean, but everything finally comes together.
But it is such a beautiful story of, I think, an experience of Christian faith because it has the belief, right? The kind of living according to this organizing principle, the miracles, right? The focus, right? And the understanding that you have a part to play, right?
Yeah. Well, in Owen, it's a certainty.
Right. Right.
And it may be that certainty that basically converts Johnny ultimately. There is another subplot that is important. Johnny's cousin, who is a sexually precocious, very angry and very aggressively feminist woman by the name of, girl at the beginning of the story, by the name of Hester Eastman, who is nicknamed Hester the Molester by her brother Simon. She loves Owen.
Oh.
Owen lives with her. And she tells Owen that she'll marry him if he wants. She'll have his children if he wants. She will not attend his funeral. Because, she knows he has this sort of monomaniacal quest that he feels he has to fulfill. So she essentially offers him kind of the alternative, marrying her and having children rather than following what he
right, or having this
believes
life that
is his destiny.
This life that people have, right?
Yeah.
They have families, they do their own thing, they live and they die, and he says, no, I have.
This is your alternative.
Right.
No.
So it's a way for
God's instrument.
It's a way for him to make a choice.
Yeah.
Right? It forces a choice in a way.
Yeah.
Okay. Ooh. Yeah, I mean, there is so much to the novel. It has so much depth, and yet also it is a page turner, right?
Yeah, it
we're
is.
talking about it in these ways because we have read it and we remember the feelings of it, and obviously you've studied it recently for this, but you just want to find out what happens. Like you're just riveted.
And we can't talk about any of the best parts of the book because they're all spoilers.
And I mean that they are spoilers. Like you want to experience it for yourself. We do not want to say too much. But why would somebody not like this book?
Well,
or why do people not like it?
I think, well, I guess you wouldn't like the book if you just thought religion was.
But it's not didactic. I mean, we're talking about it in that frame, but it's not. When you read the book, like I said, it's very plot driven. You don't have to think about it in that way. But I mean, I could see if you were sensitive to that, you may not enjoy it.
Those critics that I mentioned at the beginning that think of him only as a popular writer, what they criticize him for are, I guess, three things. One, he's overtly sentimental. Two,
you wouldn't want to feel things.
He tends to present exaggerated cartoon-like characters. And three, he sometimes blatantly pushes moral lessons in his novel.
Are they talking about all of his books, or
they're
this
talking
book?
about him in general?
Okay,
but all three of those things could easily apply to this book. There's a lot of.
So I think there's enough restraint though to make it effective, or make it a lovable novel to read.
It's still a lovable novel to read.
Yeah.
Even if it is sentimental, Owen Meany is, face it, a kind of a cartoon-like character.
Yeah. But he's still believable.
And and there is morality. There is a moral lesson here. But you could say all those things about, say, David Copperfield.
Yeah.
I applaud the first person, and I'm not the first person. I apply the first person to compare him to Dickens because his novels are Dickens-like. Dickensian in those three ways in particular.
Yeah.
But if you don't like those kinds of things in your books, then you might not like this novel.
Well, and I think that's
You'd
something...
be stupid, but you wouldn't. No, sorry.
I think that's something that is worth considering as well. I mean, nobody wants to read, a heavily didactic book.
Yeah.
But that doesn't mean that there aren't moral lessons. There isn't moral insight.
Yeah.
When we read about something that really captures a human experience, there's often moral insight.
Oh yeah. I mean, there's moral insight in Catch-22.
Sure.
Or, Terry Pratchett novels.
Well, and Never Let Me Go circles a lot of moral questions.
Lord, yes. Yeah.
It maybe doesn't say, here is the answer, but I don't know how you can close that book and not be caught up in trying to process what you think of the questions it raises, right?
Yeah.
So I understand what you're saying. I understand why people might not like it for that reason. It didn't stop me.
No. And I didn't find it preachy, but there's definitely
I didn't either.
Morality there.
I think there's a line, and he stays on the right side of it, which, it requires restraint to do that. So, awesome. Well, how do you rank this book?
Well,
I know it's very meaningful to you.
It's a good one.
I read it because you recommended it to me.
I am going to put it, I think, at number 12.
Oh, it slipped out of your top 5 books.
Right. Well, there's a lot of darn good books on this list. So right after David Copperfield.
Oh, interesting.
And right before The Great Gatsby.
I like how these little clusters are emerging in your list. It's because you like you have affection for those themes, I think, and those ways of telling stories. So they kind of cluster together on the list, probably. Well, awesome. Well, that was great. I hadn't thought about that book in a while, and it's nice to go back and revisit it in my mind. It is a beautiful book. It really is a joy to read.
Yeah.
I mean, I think it's really one of the best examples of what fiction can do in terms of lighting up your mind and taking you somewhere and helping you understand and see something new and different that also shows you about yourself.
All right. Must be time for Chaos Reader.
All right. Well, I am truly chaotic. I'm still reading my Elizabeth and Philip biography. It's very interesting. But I thought I would go back. I have a very big book back here.
Holy fright.
So I love the Royals, you may have gathered from other Chaos Reader. And this was a book I found. I don't know how I found it. I got it on Amazon ages ago. I read it during lockdown, I think. It's called Diana the Portrait. And it's actually, it has a foreword by Nelson Mandela. I don't know if you've ever heard of him.
I think so.
But it's actually published, I think, by her foundation, which is run by her Spencer family, I believe, and maybe her sons. I don't know. But it's a really interesting book. I read a lot of Diana books. Of course, it has photos because she's a very compelling personality. Very definitely has, her fashion was very of the moment. So you see a picture of her, sometimes you can almost tell what year it is because of what she's wearing and how.
You can.
Yes, I can because I have studied. But I really ended up really liking this book at first when I realized that it was published by her foundation. Sometimes that can be kind of hagiography, right? It's definitely positive, but I don't know that, a lot of people read Diana books to hear the bad.
Yeah.
Like, read something else, that you enjoy. But it has a lot of kind of anecdotes about her from people who knew her very well that are insightful but not confessional, right? They don't cross the line into sharing things that she wouldn't want shared about herself, right? It's just, they're illustrative, right, of who she was. Like, I remember them talking about her going to the Royal Ballet, the London Ballet Company that she was a patron of, and going in sometimes in the evenings when they had rehearsals and just watching the rehearsals and talking to the dancers in the company, and because she loved it, right? Like, these are the things that energized her and that she kept as part of her life because, her life was so public and so not under her own control, but there were things that she did like that. And there's just a lot of stories like that by people who knew her very well. And it's really nice to read that side of things. And it's also kind of, I guess, catharsis is the word of the episode. It seems like it's cathartic for the people who miss her to recreate her, on the pages of this book. The photos are beautiful. It's a beautiful book. It's called Diana the Portrait, by Rosalind Coward, with a foreword by, as I said, Nelson Mandela. So, heavy hitters all around.
Can't go wrong there.
Anyway, it's a rather hefty tome, but I really enjoyed it. And I remember reading it during lockdown and just being really taken away to that time and place. And I don't know, if you are a royal watcher or a Diana fan, I would recommend it to be part of your library. So I thought I would bring that out since I'm still reading about QE2 and Philip. Because she's really how I got into the whole royal thing, because she came on the scene when I was a tween. And when you're that age, you're very kind of, what do I want to be like? I
want to be a princess.
I want to be a princess. And I wanted to wear those beautiful clothes. But she just, she really captured my imagination. And I've never lost that interest in her. And that book was a really enjoyable one. So highly recommend.
All right, then.
All right. Well, we'd like to thank our podcasting producing sensei, Jerry Bruno, who helps us one way or another every week as we continue to try to do this, edit this, produce it on our own with his guidance and help. And we'd also like to thank our listeners and keep telling people about us. We see that we have listeners all over the world, and that's really exciting for us. So keep telling your friends about us and keep sharing our podcast and clicking and liking. It's hard out there for little guys like us with our independent podcast. So thank you for listening, and
we'll see you next week.
Between the covers.